So in today's episode of Fable Law, we want to talk to you about one of the most important institutions known to Albion, and that's the Heroes Guild. So the Heroes Guild operates as the home of the heroes and the training place of the heroes, and it's located in the heart of Albion, somewhere outside the border of the, capital city in Bowerstone. So the guild is where the guild apprentices are trained before they are ready to then venture out into the world alone. From the time of its establishment to the time of its demise, the guild flourished and its heroes kept the civilized world functioning and in relative safety.
After the collapse of the Old Kingdom, the remaining population of Albion fell into isolation. Distance bred suspicion, which grew into bloodshed. Soon villagers were doing unspeakable things for fresh water, food, or even women of childbearing age. Whilst mercenaries lived quite happily selling their sword to the vast paranoid sea of vindictive people, Albion was eventually brought to its knees, edging very, very close to extinction. Then out of the east, hope arrived in the most unusual forms, a bandit by the name of Nostro.
In his youth, Nostro was a bandit and a mercenary, and was driven by an ambition to leave his mark on the world. He was a giant of a man, and he was not at ease without a sword in his iron grip. However, he was not without a sense of decency, but he didn't reach his full potential until he met a wise old man known as Scythe. Please see our 2 other videos on Scythe. He seemed to appear out of nowhere and took a profound interest in Nostro, for he saw something in Nostro, something more than a mere bandit. Nostro, unknowingly, possessed the power that all the Archon's descendants shared. So Scythe hatched a plan. If he could properly guide Nostro, this bandit could achieve great things. He might even once again unite Albion and undo the damage done by the first Archon's children. And so Scythe began to tutor Nostro in how to be a leader of men.
Following Scythe's counsel, Nostro set about returning security and prosperity to Albion. First, he gathered men and women throughout Albion and established the guild where they could train to become real heroes. Meanwhile, Scythe tutored Nostro in the ways of will. Using his newfound power, along with Scythe's sage counsel, Nostro forced peace on the warring people of Albion. Thus, the Guild of Heroes was born. For a time, it seemed that Albion might return to its former greatness, but those hopes were in vain. Despite Scythe's teaching, Nostro increasingly fell under the sway of a power-hungry courtesan named Magdalena. In time, she corrupted Nostro to the point where the arena intended to be a venue in which anyone could settle disputes in public was eventually debased into a source of popular entertainment. And the Heroes' Guild became nothing more than a house of mercenaries driven by lust for profit and fame. These developments disgusted Scythe, who could only watch as Nostro and the guild fell into disrepute. Finally, he vanished, leaving Nostro to his eventual fate.
Near the end of his life, Nostro could finally see how power had corrupted him, and how far short he had fallen of his youthful ideas. By then his followers, and even his wife, had long since abandoned him. Isolated, he was easy prey for an assassin who slipped poison into his food. Nostro knew that he was dying. He called out for Scythe, and his old mentor came to sit vigil with him in his final hours. Scythe, because he's dead, basically. Scythe, with warm affection of the good things Nostro had done in his life, finally at peace with himself, Nostro died with the dawn's first light and was then buried in Lichfield graveyard. Scythe disappeared shortly thereafter.
Even with the death of its first leader, however, the guild actually continued to thrive and lived on, expanding in both structure and its overall members.
Yes, so not much is known of the guild's history between the time of Nostro and Weaver, but it is known that in his youth, Weaver, together with a cluster of heroes, Maze among them, rebelled against the previous guild regime and its resolution of offering only virtuous quests. Much blood was spilled in this short revolt in the name of freedom, leaving the number of heroes, which are already rare in a world of diminishing will presence, at its lowest for centuries. Once again, Scythe reappeared and proposed Weaver as the new guildmaster, seeing in him the serene and impartial man he would become. Someone who would leave the moral destiny of all future acolytes in their own hands. Under his leadership, heroes were free to align themselves however they wished.
Time went on, and new heroes came and went, and the people of Albion lived in relative peace. That is, until the evil being Jack of Blades reappeared, searching for his sword, the Sword of Aeons, which we've done a video on in the past, so check that out, which was stored within the guild. He used Maze, who had a life debt to Jack since he saved young Maze's life, to extract information about the sword. It was soon discovered that in order to acquire the sword, one needed an artifact called the Septimal Key, and blood from the royal bloodline of the Old Kingdom. Jack told Maze to organize a raid against the small town of Oakvale, where members of the bloodline could be found. There was a woodcutter named Brom, who is the hero of Oakvale, Oakvale's father, and Brom was actually slain by Jack himself, and the former heroine and arena champion Scarlet Robe was also kidnapped by Jack and taken to Bargate prison. And her daughter, Teresa, was blinded and left in the woods only to be adopted by bandits, who were at the time led by a former hero named Twinblade in their camp. However, the younger son, that would later be known as the hero of Oakvale, survived the raid and was left undiscovered until Maze found him and saved his life from the bandits. In this young boy, Maze saw a way to confront Jack and maybe stop the evil he had been twisted into once and for all, and obviously that leads into the story of the first game.
As Maze sees great potential in the boy, he teleports himself and the boy to the guild and convinces the guildmaster to allow him to join the Heroes Guild, where he would be trained for many years to become a hero, the greatest of them all. The hero leaves the guild for the first time in many years and is given a guild seal by the guildmaster, and then he embarks on a journey to discover the reason behind his village's destruction, in the process discovering his destiny and the true fate of his family along the way. After some time and after honing his skills, Maze informs the hero of a blind CRS living among a bandit camp near Oakvale and advises the hero to infiltrate the bandit camp. After a confrontation with Twinblade, where the hero can decide to spare him or kill him, he basically then discovers that the CRS is in fact his sister Teresa.
Yep, so later on in the hero's life, after he had gained more recognition among the people of Albion, he's actually invited to fight in the arena with Whisper by his side, where his first encounter with Jack of Blades actually takes place. It eventually becomes clear that it was Jack of Blades himself who hired the hero's mentor Maze to destroy the hero's home, and aided by his blind sister, the hero makes it his mission to defeat Jack of Blades in one way or another. The hero starts by tracking down his mother and attempting to rescue her from Bargate prison, where Jack has kept her ever since the day of the raid.
Ultimately, the hero is captured then and then spends, generally I think it's 2 years, considered to be 2 years in prison, or at least over a year, because it was 2 birthdays of the warden. And then when he finally escapes, the hero then starts to attempt to track down Jack. Leads him eventually to Hook Coast, where he then realizes that Maze has actually betrayed them and is working for Jack all along. Long story short, from here, the chain of events happen where Jack starts to open the focus sites all across Albion using the Septimal Key, and eventually getting the Sword of Aeons, which is sealed in the Chamber of Fate, where you have what was initially the final showdown with Jack and turns out to not be. So basically, the guild is a very important location for a lot of things. I guess later on, obviously Jack then sort of comes back, and with the help of some of the other heroes, including Scythe and Briar Rose, you then kind of track him down to, or track this evil down to Archon's Folly in the Northern Wastes, and turns out to be Jack's dragon form. So then basically you have the choice to throw away the mask. I think the canon version is that he does throw away the mask and that he is a hero and rather than evil. So it's believed that Jack is basically the threat of Jack has been gone forever. And that leads us into the next part, which is after that threat posed by Jack was now gone forever, the guild could now thrive again and grew again. They appointed the hero of Oakvale as the new guildmaster. However, now people around Albion did start to become more and more suspicious of the guild and its heroes more than ever before because of the lack of this evil threat. So they grew weary of some of the heroes' arrogance, believing they were above the law. With Jack gone, people thought that there was no need for the heroes anymore, and then before Oakvale fell and became Wraithmarsh, it arised the movement called the Anti-Hero League of Oakvale. One day a mob of villagers from nearby Bowerstone attacked the guild, and with the element of surprise, superior numbers, and the newly invented guns from Samarkand, and the hesitation of most heroes to attack the people they had sworn to protect, they managed to successfully destroy the guild. The surviving heroes fled into the woods, and the guild was no more.
Through the passage of time, what was left of the guild sank into the ground and was buried beneath what would become known as Bower Lake. The guild cave would lie untouched, save for a few explorers who never unearthed all of its secrets. However, most notably, the hero of Southcliff, who kept his treasure there. That's something that we do know is still stored down there. This continued until the hero of Bowerstone, after training for 10 years in the gypsy camp under the guidance of Teresa, came in search of the Chamber of Fate. It was at the time accessible from a shrine-like entrance on a small island unlockable with a guild seal, and later from a colors gate on a hill called Hero Hill. It was in the chamber that 2 meetings were held with the first 2 heroes recruited, who were Hammer and Garth.
50 years later, both entrances were now cut off. The shrine had been demolished and was replaced with a white gazebo with a white bridge leading to the shore. The spiral path of Hero Hill had been sliced so the top is inaccessible, and the region is now known as Millfields. The hero of Brightwall, as monarch, had a choice of either Reaver's request of draining the lake or Page's request of protecting it. If the previous was chosen, then she or he is able to enter the mines. However, this does not lead to the Chamber of Fate, and the mines seem to have no connection with the Heroes Guild at all.
So Nostro was, as its founder, the first leader of the guild. The later leaders of the guild were called the Guild Masters, and the only known Guild Masters so far are Weaver and his successor. Maze also describes himself as the head of the Heroes Guild, placing himself above even the Guildmaster, but we're not entirely sure what the distinction between these 2 titles are. Most likely, based on gameplay alone, I would say it's just a distinction of power, so Maze is obviously just sort of putting himself at the top because he is probably the most powerful hero at the time, whereas Weaver is just the best for sort of designating the missions and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the guild itself was also built as a fortress and as a sanctuary. The heavy stonemason walls provide protection and safety to the young hero apprentices whilst they go about their training. The guild has in the past withstood many foolhardy bandit attacks. Even some villages cannot boast this. In addition, the guild boasts facilities and amenities unrivaled in all of Albion, which do include, so there's sleeping and dining quarters, there's a map room, there's a guild library, the guild shop, the training facilities, which includes in the grounds, and the Chamber of Fate, and then some of the other buildings and grounds around. There's the guild woods, etc.
Yep. So the majority of those who actually live inside of the guild are obviously trainee heroes, donning the apprentice uniform. Most of them never actually make it to graduation, though, either due to psychological trauma, death, or injury, stress, or just unwillingness. So the actual amount of initiates who become actual heroes is fairly low. There is also a tour guide and a group of people who tour the guild constantly, who will either praise or boo you depending on your alignment. And there are also servants to be found in certain parts of the guild, obviously, to help keep it running. And there's even a tavern keeper and storekeeper running the guild's kitchen and the guild store, respectively. And I think the guild master pretty much lives there as well. There are also guild acolytes who don the dark apprentice robes and to test the hero's abilities and reward them with prizes if they beat guild records. So that's when you get sort of graded at the start of Fable 1.
Yeah.
You can get the grades and you can get rewards from those dark acolytes.
Correct. So there are actually 3 legendary weapons that are found in the Heroes Guild. So you have there's a chest that requires, I believe, 20 keys for the Murren Great Hammer. You have, of course, the Sword of Aeons, which is locked within the Chamber of Fate, and then finally you also have Avo's Tear, which is found, I think, in the empty gravestone in the courtyard, which is pretty cool.
Yep. There's also a demon door near the well training area.
One of the easiest ones to get through.
One of the easiest to open. You just need a light to open it, so you just pull out your lantern or your torch or whatever.
Your path is illuminated,
and he'll open up for you, which is pretty good tutorial way to start off the demon doors. So that's obviously why it's there.
Yeah. So there was also a beta name for Heroes Guild, which was Hero Guild, which was all in one word.
In Fable 3, the pause menu is actually like a set of rooms that you can move around in, and the main one is very similar to the guild chamber, and even the doors are basically the exact same shape. Collectively, the rooms were called the guild chambers during development, and they are now known as the sanctuary. So obviously, I think it's a sort of guild replica type thing. Yeah.
So basically, in all 3 of the games, the name and the scenery of this location is different. Which is interesting. So, I mean, that's all the lore in the Heroes Guild. From my end, it's pretty much, there's a lot of this in literary works, which is like an academy or a training area, basically a place that you can call home when you have no actual home. So, for example, Hogwarts for Harry Potter, where he would consider Hogwarts to be his real home. And there's obviously many others. There's Kaer Morhen for Geralt, for example. There's a lot of these places. and this is the one in Fable. Do you have anything that you want to say about the Heroes Guild?
No, not particularly. The only thing I guess would love to mention is that hopefully in the background here we'll have the Heroes Guild theme.
Yes.
From Fable 1, which is a fantastic soundtrack. Sometimes it's nice to just chill in the Heroes Guild doing absolutely nothing, just listening to the ambience. So, if you're playing the game, make sure you sort of stop by for a bit longer than usual and maybe just enjoy the background music.
That's it. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Thank you for watching.